right. Sounds right.
All right, so this is my first ever podcast. Hello, new podcast family. The title of this podcast will be called Love and Marriage, which that is not a diss to any of my LGBTQIA plus family. I'm very open-minded to that. It just happens that I am on the heterosexual side of things. So, with that being said, this podcast was started because I wanted to talk about life and all that is life. I am a married mother of two, a Black woman. My husband is Hispanic, and we have been together for 8 years, married for 2, and the catalyst for this podcast is that my oldest son has gained his independence, so I figured that I would gain mine by talking about, one, becoming independent and just talking about life and everything that it means to me. It kind of was an awakening for myself after, him growing up, moving on. It kind of made me grow up and move on. I participated in Lent, so that kind of made me do the same per se, like a fasting and praying and all that. So it made me want to talk about some things. I could have wrote a book, but I feel like I write a lot of poems and things like that, but I feel like poem writing can be somewhat inauthentic. So I wanted to just be a little, I feel like talking to people sometimes when I know I listen to a lot of podcasts and radio, and sometimes talking to people you can relate a little bit more to a person's voice on the other side. So wanted to do that. And sorry if I'm fidgeting a lot. Like I said, this is my first podcast and trying to make sure everything sounds okay. It'll probably sound a little crazy. So anyway, to go with that, what will this be about? This will be about a lot of things. It'll be about, like I said, love, marriage, life. Me and my husband, we both work for pretty big corporate companies. If you know us, then you'll know where we work. But, we won't really focus on that because, we're the places that define us. But I was in the military. I am a veteran. My husband he has a very interest in life as well, and so we'll talk about a lot of issues. It just won't be so much like love, marriage. It'll be, like I said, his background, culture, mine. We'll talk about so many things. Like, this will be a pretty interesting podcast, and hopefully it'll grow. Hopefully we can help a lot of people, whether it has to do with religion, parenting, finances, whatever. That will be the gist of this podcast. And so I definitely will have a list of topics. My mind has definitely been, thinking of all the things that I want to talk about and share with you guys and how I can help. So I'm excited for me and for so many others. I feel like I said, been in the military, I've traveled, I've been around all walks of life. I've, dated a lot of people of every race except for Asian. And, I'm a very open-minded person. So very excited about that. With that being said, I definitely don't want to ramble. So I am going to start with episode one. And it is late because I've been trying to get this started, but episode one, I'm gonna spit it out. Why not? Episode one is gonna be about me and my childhood, and that so this first episode, this series of episodes, and I'll try to spit it out this week, will just pretty much be about me, my childhood, and my life, and who I am, and how it shaped me, and who I am today because of it, and all that, like most people, and who I am not because of it. So there we have it. So I was born in July 1977, and my mother was only 14 years old, and my dad was 17, and she turned 15 the next month. So she was a very young girl when she had me, and we lived with my grandmother. And so pretty much my mom was young, so we lived in the inner city, and my mom was still in school. She was the only one in her family to graduate high school. And I remember her graduation night. I remember she graduated. And, I have a pretty good memory. I can remember my brother being born. She had my brother when she was 17. And I remember him being born, and I was anticipating him being born. And when they brought him home, which I thought it was him, they put a box in his crib, and I thought he was born in a box because they put this box in, but it was Pampers. But my brother was kind of super hyper, so it's almost like he probably should have been born in a box. But anyway, so we kind of we grew up in my grandma's house, and for the most part, we had a pretty decent childhood. When I look back now as an adult at our childhood, it really wasn't, it was your typical inner city childhood. We played outside like most kids. Our grandma would watch us, and it was a typical, we didn't really notice life around us. My mom worked and did what she had to do, and then she was able to move out. And when she moved out of my grandmother's house, I think that's when everything probably started going downhill. But when I look back from the little memories I have, I do know that she moved out because she was having to help out a lot with her siblings. And I think she wanted some independence from that because, like I said, she was the only person that graduated in her house. So my grandmother was kind of leaning on her a lot, and she had 2 kids to take care of, and their fathers weren't really around. And so my brother's dad had tried to step up to the plate, I guess, to help her, but my mom, like I said, was really young, and so she was, I believe, she didn't know who she wanted to date because she was 17, 18 at this time. And so I think that she had another little boyfriend on the side, which kind of made my brother's dad super jealous. And my brother's dad ended up kidnapping my mom. That was the first time that I saw my mom experience violence. And my mom had he kidnapped her from her job. And so we had lived in this duplex, and so this guy next door, I guess she screamed a lot, and then this guy next door ended up breaking in and rescuing her. And so, I guess because she had cheated on my brother's dad, that he had started turning really violent towards my mom, to where they were fighting all the time. And so then, after that, like, my mom just started being in all these, like, abusive relationships. I mean, like I said, it just, after my brother was born, my mom just, became in abusive relationships, as well as my aunt. My aunt was also in abusive relationships. So, when I was younger, I saw a lot of domestic violence. Actually, when I was younger, I used to think, oh man, that's like what was normal. And so I remember my mom like having this one boyfriend, and me and my brother, when we finally got old enough, we were going to protect my mom. And so we were able to fight this guy off. He had locked my mom outside. And so we beat him up, and we actually made his ear bleed. So me and my brother, we were like, yeah, anybody that messes with my mom, we're going to take him down. Me and my brother, we thought we were so cool, and my mom was happy too. And so, other than those things, which was almost normal, because like I said, everybody in my family all the women in our family was going through domestic violence. So it was almost normal. I had never, like, every family that I met was going through domestic violence. And on top of that, my mom, she was so young, so we were moving a lot. My mom, she was working a lot, and she was leaving me unattended a lot. And so some of the people that she was leaving me unattended with, I experienced molestation with one of the boys, one of my uncles, when we were at my grandma's house. One of the older boys that one of my uncle's girlfriends that my uncle's girlfriend's son that was there to catch the bus from my grandmother's house, he would molest me. He was supposed to be watching me, so he would molest me. And I mean, then I would go to school and also be molested there, because there was a boy at the school that would like put his hand down girls' pants, like right under the desk. And I remember my mom like taking me to the doctor, and she was thinking that my mom would think I was doing something. She'd be like, don't be at school messing with boys. She'd always think it was me. And it's like, because my mom, I don't know, my mom was such a young mother, and I don't think she could comprehend that somebody was doing something to me. And I didn't even know at that young of an age how to even explain it to her. Even to this day, like, my mom can't, like, I've tried to put into words, like, what the things that happened to me at a young age, and she can't mentally, But as, time went on, and then we ended up, my mom finally got a decent job, and then we met, I was 7 years old, and then we met what I like to call the worst person ever, my stepdad. But I think, like, my mom met this man. So my mom had one more kid before she met him, and that was my sister. She had my sister when she was 21, and my sister was 6 months old. She met my stepdad, and this man was pretty much like, I'd like to say, I don't know if you guys ever seen this movie called Raising Arizona, but he reminds me of that dude that came from hell to get that baby. He reminds me of him, but he was just like the most evil man I ever saw in my life. That's what he reminds me of. And he was just so evil, violent, like, you name it. That's what I felt he was. And he was just abusive from, like, right off the bat. Like, anything my mom challenged of him, he would hit her. And I think my mom was just so tired of like dating these losers and moving us around. And he at the time had a good job, and his mother was very controlling. And I think my mom felt like she had a way to make my mom feel like you should be in my family, but you're not good enough. And so I think my mom felt like she should try really hard to get these people to like her. And so she did everything to make this woman like her. And this lady, the mother-in-law, just treated my mom so bad. And my mom in turn would do everything in her power to make this woman try to accept us. Even this lady never accepted us as her grandchildren. And she used to treat my mom so bad. If my mom went on to have a child with my stepdad. And if my mom, my mom would pay her to watch this child, my sister, my half sister. And if my mom was late picking up her own grandchild, she would sit the baby outside on the porch. That's how evil this lady was. That family was just so evil. But my mom spent 30 years of her life with this man, and he was just evil. And my dad was he was a little wild man. He was 17 when him and my mom were together, but he was from Louisiana, and I'm from Missouri, by the way. And so he was back and forth all around. He would try to see me, but my stepdad had this thing where he felt like he was almost intimidated by when it came to my brother, because my brother was super hyper. And that'll be a topic that we'll discuss in one of my episodes on the ADHD overdiagnosis in this country. But we all know that the whole thing about that. But in his eyes, my brother was hyper. So my brother was the only one that could possibly be allowed to see his father. But my brother's father at the time didn't even want to really be bothered with him. But my father had tried to reach out to me, but my stepdad was like, if I'm going to be in their life, I don't want no other man stepping in, pretty much. That's how he was. So anyway, needless to say, my dad had tried to see me a couple of times, but they would never let him. And then my dad ended up, one day, out of the blue, they let me see my dad, and my dad, which I thought was very strange. And then, they did let me see my dad one time, and my dad had saw that I had scars on my legs, and my dad had asked me, how'd you get those scars on your legs? And I knew that, I couldn't be honest with him because I knew he would, flip out. But my dad, he was like, I'm not going to get mad. But of course he did. And then my mom, of course, got mad at me. She's like, why would you tell your dad that? And that was the first time I ever seen my stepdad scared, which I was actually happy for because I thought nobody could make him scared. And that's the first time I actually knew he was a coward, because my whole life I thought he was this big bad wolf, but then no man had ever challenged him. My real dad was the first man to ever challenge him. So anyway, when they finally let me see my real father again, because after my real dad threatened him, and they called the police on him and got a restraining order against him and all that stuff, they definitely didn't let him see me again. But then when they let me see him again, I knew something was wrong. And what happened was that my real dad had contracted HIV. He had got AIDS sharing a needle when he went to prison. And so, I was pretty much robbed of ever, because I always said, after the whole fiasco with like me having scars on myself and not being allowed to see him again, I'd always tell my dad, because he would call me, and I would always tell him like, Dad, don't worry, you know, when I get 18, like, I'm gonna come see you. You know, I would always tell him that. So I always knew, and I was close to graduating, because I was, you know, I was 14. I was so close. Like, I just knew I only had a couple of more years. And so I never got the opportunity. And when he came to see me, like when they finally let me come see him, when he came to see me, I knew something was wrong with him because he looked sick. And when he told me that he had AIDS, it was the same year that Magic Johnson had it. And I knew he had it because then when people had AIDS, you know, it was like so taboo. He asked for plastic silverware and plastic plates, you know, because back then it was like, everybody thought that if you had AIDS, you'd get it from breathing in the air. And so, you know, he was trying to tell me it was so hard for him. And I just told him, I said, Dad, I already know, because we were learning about it in school because of Magic Johnson. And he's like, how did you know? And I just said, I just know. And I just hugged him and told him I still loved him. And I mean, you know, even now when I look back on that, I've always just made my parents feel better about stuff they were going through. And I kind of just, like, even now, I'm like, I didn't even process that. I let my dad feel okay with telling me he was dying, which is crazy. Like, sitting here now talking about this, it's like, I still, like, the other day when I was at work, I was like, I never really even cried about my dad dying because, you know, to jump ahead, like when my dad did die, you know, my stepdad, he told me, like, it was an ad in the paper. He was just like, you know, your dad died. like the Lakers lost. And when he said that, I just fell to the floor because it was like, I mean, it was like a blow to the chest. And my mom tried to stop him because, you know, he was almost excited to tell me. Like, when I came home from hanging out with my friends, he's like, come here, I need to tell you something. But he was almost like, because he would always command us to his room like we were peasants, like, come here. And then he's like, I need to tell you something. I'm like, yeah, like, what now, King? And then he's like, you know, your dad died. And I was just like, he didn't even call him my daddy. He called him by his name. Like, he was just not even a person, like, to me. And it just, because I never showed my emotions ever in front of him, because he was so mean that if you let him know that you were hurting, he almost relished in it. And I remember my mom, like, when he called me back there, my mom kept saying, let me tell her. And they didn't even want to let me go to the funeral. But I think the part that sucked the most about that is that my mom didn't go to the funeral with me because I had to go with my dad's family, which, I mean, I knew my aunt and stuff, but I really didn't know them like that. And just going down there, like, they didn't know me. And it was just it's just, even like I said, even now, it's just like, and my dad, I mean, when he was alive, I mean, we were close. Like, I knew he loved me. I mean, every time I saw him, you know, he gave me a Bible with my name and carved in it and wrote in it. And just so many things, like the moments that we shared. And I do love him. And, you know, it was really hard for me to reconcile a lot of things about him because of, you know, the things that happened to him. And I'm going to do a whole thing about him one day because it's just, it'll take a lot of thought. But really, this episode is just about my mom and my early life and all that, and my stepdad, and mostly just me and who I am and why I am, and literally just why I wanted to do this because when you grow up in a household like I did, where you just have somebody that stunts your growth, when you grow up in a household when you have somebody that's so domineering and stunts your growth, hurts the people you love, pretty much holds you captive, and then you could finally be free to sing. I guess you can say I'm finally singing. And so I just really want to share stuff. I really want to, it's almost even for my mom, because even to this day, like she's gone on finally to be remarried and stuff, but she suffered a lot, all the way up till I was 37, honestly. And so, it was like I said, if I could have put him in prison for all the stuff he did to us, I would have. And the simple fact that he's still around and sometimes celebrated like he was a great dad is just laughable. But I am really gonna just wrap up this episode because I don't want to be too long-winded, but I did enjoy this first episode, and I got a lot out of it because, like, some things were revealed to myself. It's crazy how you talk and then you remember stuff that you didn't even realize you talked about.
Soundstripe.